Hi, everybody. My name is Gene McCarthy, and it's great to see you. And thank you for joining us as we commemorate Global Cancer Day. Let me tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm here. I am a proud member of the Della Leaders Club, Jimmy Mistry's fabulous, brilliant idea that not only brings global leaders together, but brings us together in a proactive way to actually make a difference in this world. I myself am a veteran of the athletic industry. I work for brands such as Nike, Reebok, Under Armour, and I was most recently the president and CEO of ASICS America. I've done that for 40 years. It served me well. And now my role in life is to serve others. And I currently serve on a board of the City Tutors in New York City, where I'm speaking to you from. And we are providing mentoring and tutoring to young people who are underprivileged and come from impoverished areas in the world and are immigrants to the great city of New York and the country of the United States. But today we're going to talk about cancer and how it's affected my life. And I'm going to be joined, I'd like to turn it over to my good friend, Vijay Bhat. Good morning and good evening, Vijay.
Thank you so much, Gene. And as you say, a big gratitude to Della Leaders Club for giving us this platform. My name is Vijay Bhat. I'm speaking to you from Mumbai in India. I'm also, like Gene, a 20-year cancer thriver. I'm the founder of an organization called Cancer Awakens. And we have pioneered a unique coaching program that we deliver online to individuals and families who are facing the trauma of cancer. In my case, I'm also the co-author of a book called My Cancer Is Me, which I wrote along with my wife, Nilima, because we shared this journey together. I'm, again, like Gene, I have a corporate background. I worked in large multinational organizations around the world. And for the last so many years, I've decided that my purpose in life is to help other people who are going through cancer and help them to not only deal with their cancer, but to grow and thrive from it. So I'm really happy to have this conversation with Gene today on the occasion of World Cancer Day. So Gene, welcome. And, when we talked the other day, you said something that really rang a bell for me, because you've been in the athletic and the fitness business for so many years. And you said that health and fitness are not the same thing. And you have come to this realization that health and fitness are not the same thing. So could you tell me and could you tell our viewers today, what do you mean by that?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. It is important to me, but let me tell you a little bit where the nucleus of it comes from, Vijay. When I grew up in New York City as a very young man, a young boy, 13 years old, I saw the cover of a magazine, a sports magazine, and I saw two guys running on the cover of this magazine. And I was just completely overwhelmed by their sinewy muscles and their bodies and their physiques, but more importantly, their quest to break the 4-minute mile. I turned that into my personal goal, and I did achieve that many years later, but that's for another podcast. But one thing I learned was that fitness is how you can achieve certain athletic achievements, but the fitness is only a part of it. I also learned that there's a health part of it. So many people will go out and run every day to get in shape to run a marathon or a 5K or a 10K. But that's only the 1 hour a day that you train. The other 23 hours should be devoted to your health. Mm-hmm. And I learned that health and fitness are, they're not mutually exclusive. They work well together, but there's different premises to health than there are to fitness. And then I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I'm not just talking about your physical health. I'm also talking about your well-being and your mental health.
Yeah. I think that's a great point that you make, because in today's world, as people are taking up fitness practices, whether it is running or gymming or swimming or cycling or yoga or Tai Chi or so many other, dance, Zumba, fitness practices, sometimes it's easy to forget that the fitness is happening in this whole person, and that we focus on the specific muscle, or we focus on the specific number of reps, or we focus on the specific number of pounds or kilos that we might be lifting, but we forget the whole person. So I think when we are talking about something like cancer and serious illnesses like cancer, it's very important to keep this whole person in mind. So Jean, from your experience, based on your cancer experience, what was your realization, and when did that realization come that this is not just a tumor, or this is not just a cancer, but this is actually happening inside Jean McCarthy, the person?
Yeah, I will say this to you. I'm very fortunate that my last executive role as the CEO of ASICS, they had a mantra that I think rings true outside of sports and fitness and all that. And the mantra is of sound mind, of sound body. And the connectivity of those two are uniquely important. And so if you're an accomplished world-class athlete, how you think about your sport and your fitness and your health will affect your body. So they operate both in the same. But when I found out that I had prostate cancer, I'm grateful that I had that awareness about body and mind. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that I was a professional at conquering it too. So, I was diagnosed about 2 years ago. And I found out through a simple blood test, and prostate cancer obviously affects men. And it's interesting how many men don't get just a routine checkup and a blood test every year. And the PSA test is what alerted my physicians that I may have a problem with my prostate. I went and had a biopsy, and sure enough, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I felt at the time, I felt a numbness because, first of all, as a former world-class athlete and as an executive that was in the health and fitness industry for 40 years, I felt I was invincible. And I didn't think anything could ever get me or change my life. And so I was numb about it. And that was my first stage, Vijay. And I can tell you more about it, but that numbness can also be perceived as denial.
Yes, you're quite right. You're quite right. I want to pick up on the point that you made about mind and body, of sound mind and of sound body. And I'd like to share with the viewers the concept that there is a good scientific basis to this, how the mind and the body work together. And that scientific basis, or that scientific principle, is called psychoneuroimmunology. And even the words themselves are very telling, because psycho means our thoughts and feelings. Neuro means the neurology of our entire body. And immunology means our immune system that keeps us in good health. So the science of psychoneuroimmunology basically says that our thoughts and feelings actually travel biochemically through the neurological system, and they can either optimize our immunity and keep us in good health, or they can actually erode and diminish our immunity and open us up to illness, including serious illnesses like cancer. So I think the point that you make, which is that it's important for us to be aware of not only what we put into our bodies, but also what we put into our minds and what we put into our hearts and what we put into our actions, has a direct impact on health. And Jean, that brings me to the second point, which is that if indeed the science is true and immunity is so important, then it must mean that we can also do our best to prevent cancer rather than only deal with it after it happens. So would you like, I know you're passionate about this idea, so would you like to say a little bit about cancer and its prevention?
Yeah, so I'll tell you that when I was diagnosed, I may have been numb, but I didn't surrender at that moment. I mean, you always talk about the three mindsets, and yes. I probably was a victim, and I also was very proud, and I didn't want it to affect my family or anybody else. So I basically took the macho approach of, I got this. And, that may be external, but that also came from my training as a world-class athlete. You could run all week long, but on Saturday when you had a race, it was my mind that took over. Everything else was done. It was my mind that took over. And, so when I went through it, even when I went through the radiation treatment, I had to mentally and emotionally prepare for it. And I actually do believe that the way I approached it, emotionally and mentally helped me, on the backside where there are side effects and things to deal with.
Yeah.
And I do believe that a positive attitude really, really helped me. And I also actually, the actual act of going through the radiation, which can be quite daunting, I was prepared for that. And again, this is where my spirit and my soul and my body and my intellect all came together. But I also prepared well by the way I ate, and I took care of my body and the things I put into it. And it was quite a process where most people would go and if they have to go for treatment, whether it's chemotherapy or radiation, whatever it may be, they might block out everything external of that one moment. And I believe that there's lots you can do beforehand, as well as lots you can do after, to minimize the dilemma, but also maximize your spirit as a human being.
Yeah, I think you're making a very important point. In our work with cancer coaching, what we have realized is that if you have to take a holistic approach, that means you have to deal with the whole person, not just the tumor, not just the organ in which the tumor has occurred, then it means that we have to address ourselves at the physical level, which you talked about, diet, exercise, rest, etc. We have to deal with ourselves at the emotional level, because as we said, the science of psychoneuroimmunology says that our thoughts and feelings will directly affect our immunity. We have to address ourselves at the mental level. Again, it comes to our thoughts. We have to address ourselves at the relational level, because if you're in a toxic setup at work or at home, it's once again going to compromise your immunity. It's also going to compromise your healing. And finally, we have to address ourselves at the spiritual level. You mentioned soul. And I think that in some ways, the current paradigm of cancer does not adequately equip people to deal with themselves at all these 5 levels. And therefore, today we are seeing the holistic and integrated approach become so popular and become so much in demand, because it gives people a sense that I'm looking after myself as a whole person. So just building on that, you mentioned in your conversation earlier that we talk about the 3 mindsets. And so let's talk a little bit about, the emotional dimensions of cancer and the mindset. So I'll ask you to go first, and then I will come in and talk a little bit about 3 mindsets. So I know that you're a strong proponent also of this whole emotional aspects of cancer before, during, and after. So would you like to say something about that, Gene?
Yeah, I credit my ability as an athlete to prepare for the whole holistic approach to this. So let me give you a day in the life, and when I had to go for radiation. First of all, I did have to prepare physically. There were certain, elements of, making sure your body was ready. There were certain diets you could have or not have and all that. So there was a lot of preparation that I put into it. And I treated it like it was the buildup to the crescendo, which would have been the radiation. The radiation ultimately became the easiest part. All I had to do was lay there. And I not only did I lay there, I never surrendered, but I gave in. I felt that this was just another step, and I had already prepared to this point. Then after it was over, I thought it was important. First of all, I was very grateful to the people that helped me. And then I went out and rewarded myself. I had to basically fast for 2 days before each treatment. And then after I went out and I rewarded myself with something delicious and something that I enjoyed. And I felt it as like I was completing the process. And then I also made sure that I took a walk. I live very close to the Atlantic Ocean. I'm very fortunate. I took a walk just to enjoy that fresh air and just to see, this big, beautiful world that we're all just a small part of. Yeah. And I guess it not only made the whole thing one big event for me, but it prepared me for the next round of radiation, which was a day later.
As I hear you speak, I can literally imagine how you as a world-class athlete are in a way taking charge of your own health and your treatment, and taking charge of your own body and your mind and your soul. And from our work, working with so many people with cancer, this is a very important aspect of thriving, which is that when you have cancer, obviously, because it comes as a shock and, you have to deal with your own mortality and all of that stuff, you tend to feel powerless. And this is that victim mindset. You feel as if, life has attacked you, or life has ambushed you, or life has betrayed you, and that there is not that much that you can do about it. But in order to move away from that victim mindset, you have to start reclaiming your power. And all the stuff that you described, I would describe it as reclaiming your power, whether it was preparing for the radiation, the attitude that you took during your radiation, and how you closed the cycle after the radiation with rewarding yourself. So that reclaiming of power is a very important aspect. And so we talked about the victim, but the second mindset that we see is the mindset of a survivor. And this survivor mindset is the mindset of somebody who's going to fight the good fight. Somebody who's going to use all their resources, somebody who's going to do it with courage, and somebody who's going to do it with a sense of grit and determination. And, the whole idea is, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to overcome this. Even earlier, DLC did this wonderful little video promo. And in that video promo, there was this whole thing about looking at cancer as a battle to be fought and to be won. But interestingly, the thriver mindset goes beyond that. And the thriver mindset does not look at cancer as a battle to be fought and a battle to be won. It looks at cancer as actually a life event from which we have to make meaning, and from which we have to grow and develop and evolve as people. And so I'd like to say, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I'm very impressed with this idea that you presented, Vijay, about the victim, the survivor, and then, of course, the thriver. And I feel that I had at one point gone through all three of those.
Yes.
But I think you bring up an interesting point. I've never thought of the notion of beating cancer like it's something you beat. I think of it as it's an element in your life that is a part of you that I think that if you deny it, it's going to make it worse. If you accept it, as hard as that may be. I remember when I went to see the doctor, and he told me that I had prostate cancer, and I was like, okay. And I was prepared for it. And it wasn't like I had a dramatic meltdown or anything like that. Now, there may have been a little denial in there, but my first attitude was, back to surviving, my first attitude is, okay, what are we going to do? What's our plan now, doctor? Yes. What are we going to do? We're going to do this together, and I'm in if you're in. And that was kind of my mindset. Yeah. Then, after it was over, and this is the part I want to ask you about, because these are real things. So radiation is harsh. Yes. And I did have side effects, and the side effects lasted for several months. I still have them now, and this is like 7 months later. And I saw it as a taunt from another being called cancer that was saying, go ahead, I'm going to remind you now that everything you went through, even though the radiation is over, the test is still on. And I had my days when I felt sorry for myself, when I felt like I was damaged goods, when I felt like just a broken man. Yeah. But I dealt with those. And I think sometimes you have to touch the bottom of the pool before you realize that the oxygen's at the top of the water. So, but then I somehow, and I don't know, I did this deliberately, but I somehow went from survivor to thriver. That's why I'm on this fireside chat with you. Can you talk a little bit more about survivor to thriver? Because I'm fascinated by it. And I'm sure everybody listening would be too.
Yeah. So as I said, the survivor mindset is fighting the good fight. And that is the dominant narrative, or that is the dominant paradigm around cancer and cancer care today. But if you actually go and talk to people who've who've been in remission for many years, and if you actually look at their stories and you actually look at what they did, many of them will tell you that there was a moment when that flip occurred, when cancer was not an enemy anymore, but cancer was something to be accepted, embraced, and even honored. Because cancer changes you and cancer teaches you many things in life that we may not have otherwise learned. And when we look at cancer like that, and when we understand that cancer is not something that comes from the outside, that cancer is something that is in me, in my cells, then I start to take a very different approach to myself, my health, and my well being. It also does something very important, which is that it arouses compassion for the suffering of others. And for example, what DLC does through all their social impact programs and creating this platform to help us to come and talk and to get this message out to more people is to be able to allow us to take our message and through this compassionate platform, try and help as many people as possible. So you will find that there are some people who have had cancer who will say, I don't want to deal with it. I want to put it behind me. I don't even want to talk about it. But a large number of people that I come across say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to leverage my experience for the benefit of others. I want to help other people who may be going through this. And so therefore we say that in Thrivers not only reclaim their power, but they use their experience to grow and they use their experience to serve others.
I want to take it one step further, Vijay. I am, in my career, the corporate world has its moments. Yes, there's the rush of adrenaline when you travel the world and you meet wonderful people. And in my life, I've been to the Olympics and I've been to all of these different events. So I have a storied life where my avocation and my vocation were the same thing. But later in my career, I felt that when I went home at night after a day at the office, I didn't feel that getting a big order from a customer was something that motivated me. And I didn't feel if one of our athletes won an Olympic gold medal, that would motivate me. What motivated me were these young people who would have the courage to walk up to the CEO and say, can I ask you for some advice? And that's what motivated me, for, this follow-up to my career. But the reason I bring that up is when I was diagnosed with cancer, which is after I left my corporate career, I also, cancer made me even more alive, if that's the right word, and how I work with other people now, including the three young ladies that I mentor through the city tutors I mentioned at the beginning of our fireside chat. I'm just so alerted to what's going on in their lives, and I'm more aware of everything. So, you can look at cancer as an enemy, or you can look at it as, I definitely don't look at it as a camaraderie, but I do look at it as it's brought an extension of me that I don't know that I was aware of beforehand.
Yes. What you're describing, Gene, is really what happens to human beings when we are confronted with our own mortality. That in being confronted with our own mortality, we begin to see the wonder and the preciousness of life. And when we are able to see that wonder and preciousness of life in ourselves and in people around us, particularly young people, then it gives our life a different purpose and a different meaning. And so what you did in your corporate career, you may have mentored hundreds of thousands of young people in your corporate career. But today, what you're doing through your tutoring work may give it a slightly different taste and a slightly different sweetness because of who you have become. Not because the tutoring is different or not because the people are different, but because you are coming at it with a certain wonder and a certain compassion and a certain love of life. And this is very common, and this is very important for Thrivers to take on board.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's an old saying that difficult times aren't character building. Difficult times are character revealing.
Yes.
And if there's something enthusiastic about cancer, if that should even be said as a sentence, but if there's something enthusiastic, it's that I found another side of myself. Yes. That maybe the lens was always on it, but needed to be dusted off, or maybe I was completely unaware of. But it's a dimension now that I have that not only allows me to deal with it, and I still am going through, some physical problems because of radiation. And quite frankly, I have prostate cancer. I'm not past it. I will have it until I don't. But the other thing that it's done is you said a word that I've always felt was a bad word in the corporate world. And I always thought it was a good word. That's compassion and empathy. And it has actually amplified my compassion and my empathy, not just for maybe people who are struggling, in life or struggling even with cancer, but just empathy for the young lady bagging the groceries in the grocery store and how hard she's working, the empathy for the bus driver that has to, put himself at risk every day, all of those things. So I love the awareness that I have, not just about cancer treatment and all that, but how my mind and body actually fuse together.
So since we have only about a minute left to close our session, Gene, I'd like to close by asking you if you were to give one tip to our audience who is watching this session today or who will watch it later on YouTube and so on, which has to do with your lived and earned insight from your cancer experience, what would you like to say to them?
I would like to say that cancer, like any other element in your life, it's a part of your life. I'm not telling you to embrace it, but don't fight it. Don't struggle. Treat it as a friendly adversary, because it will unveil for you some sides of you that you never knew existed, and it'll reveal your true character, and it will also make you more alive after, and how you deal with the people in your lives, whether they're close family or friends or even strangers. So it's a friendly adversary, I'd like to think, and it's there. I'm not going to chase it away, but I'm not going to let it get the best of me either.
Wonderful, beautiful. From my standpoint, I always say that cancer healed me. That, cancer made me a better person than I used to be before. And so my tip to the viewers today and to people who I talk to in many different forums is to say, let cancer heal you. It's a slightly different way of saying, Gene, exactly what you said. Gene, thank you so much for joining this chat. I would like to close by offering our sincere gratitude to Della Leaders Club for making this platform available. Della, as Gene said, is an amazing platform, and they are really committed to the whole concept of social impact through supporting more than 50 causes around the world. So for those of you who are interested in learning a little more about Della Leaders Club, please check them out on the web. Thank you, Gene, once again. And I hope that our association will continue from this conversation, and that when times are better, we will meet in New York, and you can show me what are those delicious treats that you gave yourself after the radiation.
I promise you I will, Vijay. And thank you for all you do, and for being such a passionate advocate for curing cancer and living with cancer. It's very inspirational, and it's an honor to know you. And our worlds will continue on for a long time, I'm convinced.
Thank you so much, Gene. And good night, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are.